So in this video I want to talk about labeling. So we're going to focus on labeling the Comuna layer, the lakes layer, and maybe the cities as well. So let me turn off the archaeological sites and the churches, and we'll just start with the Comuna here. Okay, so to label something from the layer styling panel, you switch to this labels tab. And you can choose single labels, and then you simply choose which field you want to label features with. So we'll choose Comuna noun. You then have a whole series of tabs across here for formatting labels, and you can do quite a bit with labels. So you can choose the font and the font style, bold, regular, etc. You can set the size and the color of the font. So I'm going to choose this kind of dark brown for the names of the Comuna, so I can still see them, but they're kind of blend into the map a little bit. And I'm going to choose a bold font for these. I can increase the size. And one thing that can really help when you have labels that are on a busy background like this is putting a label halo around them to make them easier to read. And labels will also get placed automatically as I scroll around the map, so they'll move as you shift the map around because they're being placed automatically based on the map extent and your settings. It is possible to place labels specifically in specific locations. I can show you that as well. But here with these Comuna, when we have a Comuna name against the background and there's a lot of streets around, that can kind of interfere with reading the label. So one thing you can do to help with that is use this buffer tab to draw a text buffer around the label, and this will basically be a halo around the label. And so as I get this up to about 1 millimeter, you can see that halo text around the font. But one thing with these halos, when you're making a nice map, you don't want the halo to have the visual weight. You just want the label to be legible. So instead of choosing the default white color, one trick you can use is to click the drop down arrow for color and choose this pick color option, which gives you the eyedropper and allows you to choose a background color. And I can choose the color of my Comuna as the halo color. So then the halo disappears, but it does mask out the roads around the label, so it makes the label easier to read without the halo being visible. So we have a couple lakes here around Skoskolen, and we can label the lakes as well. So with lakes, again, we can choose single labels, and we have a name field here, and I can use that to label these lakes. And I think for the lakes, I'll make the text a dark blue color, and I'll also set it as italic. And with lakes, you can also do some nice things to spread the text out. Well, first off, I can go over to this tab here, which is placement settings, and I can tell QGIS to choose free angled text or offset from centroid, or there's a lot of different choices that you can make here to set this label so that it's going to be in a nice place, kind of like offset from centroid here. You can also, on this tab, formatting, you can change the case of the text, all uppercase, all lowercase, and you can control the spacing. So I could increase the spacing for the words to spread this text out a little bit, and do a little bit for the letters too to give it a more relaxed feel. So now I have those lakes labeled. And the last thing I will work with are the cities. So I'll turn on the cities, and I'm going to switch to the Labels tab for the cities. Choose Single Labels, and label these with the name. So here I'm going to reduce the font size. And we also have, in relation to placement settings on this tab, we can set the distance away from the feature so that there's enough spread. And I think for these I'll give the same text buffer technique that I used previously with Kamuna so that these become easier to read. So you can clearly spend a lot of time labeling things. There's so many parameters here. And no matter how you switch these settings around, there's often a case where you just can't get the label to fall in the correct place. So it is also possible with the labeling toolbar to move labels to a precise location that you want. So let me show that. This is the labeling toolbar here. And if I select my cities layer, and well, let me instead do this for Kamuna. So if I select my Kamuna layer, I can use on the labels toolbar the move a label, diagram, or callout. And then I can select one of my labels and left click on it. And QGIS is going to ask me for the feature ID of this layer. So choose feature ID and click OK. And now I can select this label and move it. And it will land exactly where I want it to be. And that location is now stored. And I can move any of these Kamuna labels to exact locations where I want them to be. And they won't shift positions. They're locked in place. So that's also possible to do. It's also possible to use callouts. So for example, I might be in the situation where I don't have room for a label on the map, and I want this label to be outside the polygon. So I can choose to have callouts, and then I could, to show you how this works, I can move this label outside the Kamuna, and now it's going to draw a callout to the Kamuna, and there's different forms that you can use for these label callouts. It's right now using a curved line. I can choose a simple line or a Manhattan line. So with these callouts, it's also possible to choose where that line is going to be positioned. So I can choose point on exterior, point on surface, centroid, etc. I'll choose that. So you can go ahead and use callouts when you need them, so that if there's in a situation where the label doesn't fit, the callout will let you still point to that feature without it becoming confusing. And then one issue here is that this also still has the halo around it. I can fix that by using this other tool on the labels toolbar, change label properties. And I can click on this label, and I can just tell it to not draw the text buffer for that feature. And now that will go away. So this one particular label doesn't have the buffer around it, but the rest do. So that's a short review of labeling. I encourage you to spend a little time. There's more in here than I had time to cover. There's a lot of options in here for labeling, including drawing backgrounds around labels, which can include different shapes and SVG symbols for putting a background, like a rectangle, or behind a label, and even drop shadows, so that you can put drop shadows underneath labels. So I encourage you to explore these features. You can spend a lot of time with labels, and a well-labeled map is worth the time it takes to do it, because labels really help the map reader understand what they're looking at. When something is well labeled, it doesn't really have to go in the map legend. I mean, everyone's going to know that this is Esrim So and that it's a lake because we have it styled well and we have it labeled. So it's pretty clear what that is. And so that's something we could leave off the legend because we've done such a good job of cartography that we don't have to explain what that feature is. And that's a strategy you should try to use. Try to make your features so well symboled and labeled that it's very clear to everyone what they are on the map.